Hey everyone, welcome to Community Bread's fifth stream. We're here with Seth Troxler to talk about the importance of supporting and elevating the marginalized community, his recent project with Beatport for the celebration of Black History Month, in addition to a collaboration that the Community Bread is working on with him called Dream Access TV, which will be doing a weekly broadcast. So yeah, how's it going, Seth?
Yeah, really good. Just I'm on a different part of the world, so I'm just waking up. But yeah, things are really good over here. Relaxing in my weird kitchen studio. Yeah, just really happy to be here and talk to you guys, and yeah, that's it.
Awesome. How have you been handling the pandemic? I know it's a crazy time for everyone, with the music industry, along with several other creative industries put on pause. How have you been spending this time? I know that you have some big news in your life.
Yeah. Well, I'm having a kid, so that helps a lot. That's been pretty crazy in itself. Just that whole process. Something that I never really thought was going to happen. And I got there. So it was a good use of time, I guess, in some ways. The one time in the world where I'm kind of steady in one place. It's been really good for my partner and I. And outside of that, I've just been making a lot of music and working on these incredible projects, doing new things, and just trying to figure out other ways to really push the needle forward in terms of what electronic music is and can be, and what my artistry is, and just try to use the time the best we can. It's kind of funny as things are winding down and some of the world is starting to open up. Everyone, I almost kind of wish I had more time and had done more, but I'm really happy to see the world kind of back open and see people like you in person and kind of get back in the swing of things. I think there's going to be a big boom in dance music and for people going out once this is all finished. So I'm looking forward to seeing what that kind of turns into.
Yeah, it's going to be amazing to see everyone, kind of return to some idea of normalcy and celebrate, the time that a lot of us have taken for granted, going out and being together with our communities and supporting one another. During this time, you did the Beatport's residency celebrating Black History Month, where you had Ron Trent and Tony Humphries as the notable legendary DJs, on board to join you along. Along with discussions from Dr. Cornel West, which I think were important. He talked about the African American origins of house and techno, which is so important, especially in today's day and age where. So, that's not really, that can be something that's swept under the rug, except it was, Black artists and queer artists that really pioneered house 100%. Music, techno music in the queer underground scenes in Chicago, in New York, and Detroit. Yeah. So tell us a bit about that project.
Yeah. I mean, it was incredible to be kind of selected as Artist of the Month for Black History Month. It's kind of funny to think, though, that just like a kind of tokenized version. They're like, oh, let's get Seth and be Artist of the Month, to set up these talks, but really made the best use of it possible. And I really thought, especially on a platform like Beatport, it's so important to tell the history of what electronic music is and really push forward that it is kind of, like you said, from Black and marginalized communities. I think so much of kind of the new tale of electronic music, kind of like the new history of electronic music, especially with EDM, or people looking at Beatport, I think they had kind of skipped the whole history lesson that you and I, so many of your viewers, got, and were part of that underground culture. So being able to speak with Dr. West, who is a big supporter of electronic music and house music. He's launching his own label, Purple Music Sound, and the House of West, and being able to speak with obviously Tony and Ron, and Kevin Saunderson, Stacey Hotwax Hale, Paul Johnson and Kay Lexi, and get these real stories, especially, Ron and Tony gave so many in-depth kind of perspectives and memories from things that, even as like someone like you or I or other people watching who know so much about house music, or dance music, so many things that I didn't know. Like I didn't know that there was a church underneath Zanzibar Club in Jersey, of like all these like really small factoids that were really important to like how house music began and how it grew. You know, it's only now, and we're in a time where we can have these first person event, like kind of recalls of these kind of these moments. And it's so important that we save them for future generations to understand where this music came from, because in so many ways, electronic music and dance music is maybe one of the last great human movements. And people need to understand that it was gay culture, it was marginalized culture, it was Black culture that really are to be given credit for why we're here and able to kind of be together now, even though we're not able to be together. But, you know, why this kind of whole thing kind of kicked off, you know? And I think there's so many stories still to be told, and so many, so much history that had been forgotten, that it's like there's so many young kids, you know. I mean, oftentimes I'm playing records that I'm like, God, this record's older than half the people in the crowd. So when it goes on to kind of really getting further in that point of telling the exact histories of why this music is started, it's really, I think, important for us to realize the founders and the stories that they have to tell.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that, you know, during this challenging pandemic time, especially, you know, it being isolated with everyone's careers on pause, I think it allowed us to engage in these conversations and really reflect on the importance of music, you know, bringing communities together, where it comes from, and basically engaging in that as we strive to rebuild, you know, our crumbled industries going forwards. I'm curious to know, like, about your rave experiences growing up, and you know, the impact of the marginalized and queer communities, and your experience as, you know, a Black artist. You know, through your successes, I know that there are also struggles that came along with that. So
many. I mean, I grew up in the suburbs of Detroit, but I grew up in the Detroit electronic music scene in the early 2000s, like from '99 on. And so really, I moved there, started high school, did some things. Then I was working at a record store called Melodies and Memories, very famous record store there in Detroit. And through that, I met so many people in the scene, Mike Ciravito, like just everyone, actually, Omar S. There's like Omar S. put out my first record. And then, but how I started DJing actually was this queer club, this gay club called The Works. And the bartender there, the night manager, Craig Roswolf, he kind of liked me a little bit. So I played it up just like enough to like kind of get my foot in the door, and I get some DJ gigs and, you know, be able to drink underage really. So I played kind of a bit of the twink card to be able to stay in the club. And,
that's how you started your career as
that's how I started my career.
Gay owner.
I played it up. And then there's some other nights called Dorkwave and Untitled. So Mike Servito and Derek Westlake and Matt Deer were all a part of that. Ryan Elliott actually was a regular customer of mine at the record store, and he was taking me to go play with him and Matt Deer at when I was still in high school. This is all while I was in high school, actually. At Goodnight Gracies, which was a night that Ghostly did when they were all just out of college, and just all was like very small, kind of localized situation. You know, Richie Houghton had just been let back into America. There were so many like underground culture had been going through like a kind of regeneration period, I think. In terms that like after the huge rave scene in the 90s and after the Rave Act in America, raves kind of had stopped and everything went to clubs, and the scene had to went from being thousands of people to like a few hundred, you know. And then Detroit was in this kind of weird kind of place that like most of the people were around. Carlos Sufrat, you know, all these people were just, it was just all DJs, right? It was like a scene full of DJs and music nerds, and you know, a lot of them being Black or gay, or like that was the scene, you know. It stopped being kind of more from the suburbs and being more urban people, or like kids, like problematic, because I'm not going to say that, like was freaks, basically. It was just
right,
freaks
right. You know, everyone who didn't fit in everywhere else. Everyone who didn't fit in
everywhere else, that's where you went.
Yeah.
You know, like the rave was a safe space because you were too weird to go anywhere else. You know, you didn't have to.
Right.
You guys had come up with safe spaces because no one else dared to go, and you're just like,
Right.
not.
Yeah, with all the other ostracized, you know, kids. You know?
Yeah, all the ostracized kids. You're like, oh, we're here together. It's perfect. You know, there wasn't really that bro culture and dance music then. And yeah, that's kind of how it started. Then in 2005, Omar S had brought me to play Panorama Bar, and Robert Johnson has like just graduated high school, was like 19. And then from there, I moved to Europe, and really the rest is history. But yeah, it was just really Matthew Deere and all these guys, and you know, Derek plus like and Mike and all. I was like the little runt, annoying kid who wouldn't go away. And they showed up every weekend, and they kind of like snuck in the back room. Then we had, I mean, I can't be remiss without speaking about Vision Quest, which really brought me forward, and like my whole crew there with Ryan Cross and Sean Reeves and Lee Curtis, and kind of started a thing. And we're doing the old Miami parties that were really famous, Detroit for so long, and so many other things. But it was really just about community building and being part of the community. And that's what I always tell kids and people want to get involved. I'm like, just be a part of your community, get involved, meet everyone, and do everything from, you know, I passed out flyers, I worked the door, I did everything to get to this point now, you know. And it's like, I always say I'm a lifer like you or like so many other people. When you get that bug and you know you're in it for life, you just do anything you can to support that culture and scene. And I think with the Black History Month and with what we're trying to do with Dream Access TV, this new kind of platform we're launching on Twitch, it's really about just trying to figure out new ways to get people interested in electronic music, with also telling the kind of history and giving them a kind of a future perspective of what this culture could be, you know. And that's really important to me, to try to drive forward this culture in any way possible, just but also keep what had happened before, because I think it's so important for future generations to be able to experience what we experienced, and we still experience. You know, New York is such a thriving underground scene, but I want that to be able to kind of happen in the future. You know, I want people to see that kind of that proto model of what dance music was, because that was the thing with you know, gay and marginalized communities, Black communities, and everyone mixed together, because that's really where the spark on the dance floor, that like lit the fire on the dance floor, like kind of began. And that would be really sad if we lost that culture.
Yeah, totally. You know, it's important to reflect on where we came from, and you know, what's been given to us, or how it's all shaped the way in which in the world that we live in today. You know, and that's part of the reason why we started Community Bread, to not only support and elevate marginalized voices in the queer community, but also to have the opportunities to have conversations with people like you, who have been in the music industry, who've been a part of, you know, who will be a part of its history, you know, and reflect on the importance of that. So I wanted to ask you, in regards to that, you as a rising Black artist, and a lot of people, you know, look up to you in regards to not just the DJ, but also a producer, as someone who, you know, has taken risks and taken the leadership roles in you know, basically producing and promoting these kinds of collaborative communal spaces. What kind of hardships have you faced throughout your years? Because, you know, your successes are obviously, you know, bud from a lot of hardships that you've encountered, and you know, we don't really hear about that stuff.
There's so many. I mean, it's so hard to become established in electronic music, and I mean, there are some hardships and some benefits, I think, from being Black in electronic music. I mean, one thing that we always found to be quite weird or funny, I mean, it's something that really didn't play out so well when we started, the Martinez brothers and I started Tuskegee Records. It was a label that we had found the need for like 6-7 years ago, because we were like out playing out together, and we were like, you know, they're from New York, and part of that kind of old house scene in New York, and with Louis Vega and all these guys. And they were brought up in the shelter and this stuff, and me being from Detroit and kind of having a similar path. We were playing out around and like knowing the history of electronic music and dance music and where it came from in those cities. We were like, how are we like the only people of color here? We're just like, how are there like 10 of us or 10 new kids coming up that were of color, right? And it was like, we're like, wow, we should try to create a record label that promotes people of color. Then upon doing so, we found a huge backlash from both distribution and record stores being like saying we're like reverse racist in a way, or like they were like, yeah, it was really crazy. Like, they wouldn't stock our records because they said that this was like a form of racism. But we were just like, hey, we're just trying to promote more young artists to realize that this could be a path for them, because it took us all around the world, and we wanted young kids to realize that electronic music also was from like Latinos and Blacks and gay people, and like that they could also do this, and that this was a path that they can kind of set out on. And that was kind of a funny thing, and that was it really affected sales and like kind of like the label as a whole. We kind of actually at the end, like before the pandemic, put the label on hold for a bit, just because it was so hard to get our records stocked and be out, and it's kind of then the whole Black Lives Matter thing, and then everyone started talking about this concept, and we were like, we were left out a lot of those conversations. I think mainly because of being more like a mainstream underground artist. It was kind of like, it's funny. So like sometimes it's kind of like you face this too black and not black enough kind of struggle, and that also in Detroit, it was kind of funny, like being part of the Detroit scene and working in the record store and throwing so many parties there. I also had struggles within the Black community or in the techno community where, forever I was the suburban kid, because I grew up in Lake Orion, the suburb near our friend Tova. Yeah, so we grew up in the suburbs, and and it was like this thing. And even Carl Craig, who's a dear friend of mine, it wasn't until I was, Omar S. and a lot of other people, they always took me in, and, Kevin Saunderson was always really helpful. And there's a lot of, Keith Worthy, and there's so many other people who were always really there for me, and people in the underground scene. But some of the old gatekeepers were always a bit like, oh, I don't know, I'm not super dark. I'm, again, have quite a suburban accent. And it wasn't until I got the #1 DJ and resident advisor that they were like, okay, Detroit, Seth Troxler. And I'm like, so am I in now?
Oh my God, yeah.
And they're like, all right, you're in. You're like, you're part of the story now. And I'm like, all right, cool. But I had to get that accolade first to really be acknowledged by even my own kind of community ethnically, So, there's struggles on both sides, but at the same time being Black when I came to Europe and being from the suburbs and kind of having this more kind of European take, and I wasn't as hard to kind of communicate with, but like relate to. I think for many artists or many people in the European scene, I went to parties, I kind of, I partied, and this type of stuff. It allowed me to kind of penetrate that scene as well. Also as kind of like the token Black Detroit artist, but someone that was like a bit more palatable for the European market, So that like in many ways it helped my career, but it's like this kind of funny thing again of like being the token Black guy, but then also at home not being Black enough for the
right.
So like that's something that always like had I guess weighed on me personally, and also within like my kind of friend groups, always being like Black Seth or like the whatever, just being Seth. And there's like a very long time that I had kind of struggled with that, and kind of just I went to Europe mainly because I wanted to just be regarded as my own person, right? So that was like a thing that I definitely had to overcome. I mean, it's kind of funny though, when the both Black Lives Matter and everything happening in the pandemic, it kind of like re-sparked this this fire of identity, I think, and Black identity within me. And that's something that like, I mean, from then I was just like, I want to be Black as fuck now, like and just like really kind of like, no, I got really into other types of music and stuff. And then I really started to deeply identify also with the roots of house music and how that music made me feel. And that's how I started anyway, and kind of pulled myself more away from kind of Eurocentric, I think, kind of music that had been in, not really pulled myself away, but just kind of re-identified with the roots of house music and what my kind of mission would be moving forward in dance music and the music that I wanted to promote and push forward. And that's like all my streams, all my the Beatport thing, everything now is just kind of going back to almost heritage house and original house music and pushing for that idea, less so than kind of like more modern kind of European dance music and techno. Like I just saw myself back in New York house and Detroit techno and just being like, this is what's up. And like, I just want to be a DJ who pushes that. So
that stuff will always be, timeless. And it's especially nostalgic now as we are, in this period where we aren't having the parties, we aren't having the community get-togethers. We're not having the DJs play in person. So listening to those tracks, especially for you, I'm sure it brings a lot of memories, especially, how the tracks influenced you and those different scenes and the communities. It's really funny because when we were first talking about interviewing you for this, like you and I had the conversation at Tova's, talking about communities, music, and just like a casual chat, but bring you onto Community Bread, it's like, what is Seth Troxler doing here? And I think that it's really important to engage in these conversations because we all have the same stuff. We're all coming from these vibrant communities, and these conversations are important, especially as we begin to build a different future after the pandemic. Putting Black artists and marginalized artists and queer artists in leadership roles and basically shifting the power dynamic of the music industry. How do you feel about the music industry and its limitations in terms of like inclusivity and accessibility, and how has that changed since you started?
Yeah, I think I mean, well, it's kind of a funny question because I obviously when I started, it was completely inclusive. There was no real talk, and we all supported each other. Like, I'm straight, but I grew up in the gay club scene, really in Detroit. And I've always been going to like kind of queer clubs my whole life. But then I think at some point there's more divisions put up. Within like what communities are and who can go where and who belongs where, instead of it just being an open thing. And I think for me, becoming more of like a semi-underground mainstream artist, I also saw the crowd or the people who I played for start to change at times. And, I always made a point with my agents and everything to still like to make a balance between gigs for money and then gigs for the community that I really wanted to play for, and like the parties that were important to me, both in Europe and America. But it's hard to see as well. I think kind of younger people who have just joined the scene in many different contexts kind of creates really great spaces for themselves, but also exclude others, and like in a thing. And I would really hope that now that we're coming back to kind of a open period or like a new renaissance period of electronic music, that people will see that like, people like myself really support, the community on here and have always done so. And, it's not an us versus them. And same with African American communities or Black communities. There's so many underground Black events in Europe, but that are really kind of like Blacks only, and that's like, okay, it's cool. But when we're creating these spaces for us and to celebrate, we should also be really inclusive of other people who want to join those spaces and who do so in a very respectfully way, and who also share the same ideals, but who may not be, let's say, like linked in terms of sexual orientation or color, just because that is, one of their kind of preferences. It doesn't mean that they don't support you or don't want to be kind of involved, because that's also a form of exclusion, so I just want to see that kind of open more, because I think now with the general wokeness, people have also become kind of in some way exclusive towards building a greater, more open community. And that is at the end of the day, what we're all looking to do is build something, a kind of neo-utopia where everyone's accepted for the people that they are, and to be with each other, and to, you know, share these incredible moments, you know. And I think that's where it's really beautiful. I know, like, I've been going to parties for a long time, and then Tova got me in deeper to the New York queer scene and stuff in the past years, and I was just like, this is the fucking best thing I've been able to go, but we've been able to do for years, you know. And I was going to kind of queer parties in Europe, but nothing was like that was going on in America, and that really opened my eyes to, like, I was like, fucking finally, there's like a real event that I can go to that's underground, that's a true cultural experience, you know. And before that, I had just been lacking in kind of having real experiential moments, and that like opened my eyes to so many things. I mean, I've been very open to actually the queer community, but musically, it opened my eyes to so many new ideas, and re-sparked the ideas of, you know, like some really great acid moments and other things. And I was just like, fuck, this is it, you know. It's love being there body to body. It's like, this is a real experience. This is beautiful, you know. And without having a friend kind of take me in, and also everyone there being, at times people were like, oh, then I was like, everyone's like, oh, Seth's like one of us, it's fine. But like, without a friend being able to usher me in and to be able to see that that culture, it was very hidden, you know. And it should be hidden, you know, but it should also be open to people who find their way there. So that's what I hope, and really kind of hope to push forward, you know, as well as booking for, you know, I'm always trying to, at DC10, always pushing to bring in more marginalized communities on the rosters, and, you know, create a zone where people also in kind of, like I say, a more and we can start bridging those ideas so people can hear that music, and also learn more about those scenes and cultures. So that's my thing. It's just being that bridge, you know, and trying to help be that bridge to bring people over and see both sides, and hopefully create a larger dance music scene that's less kind of bro bash,
right.
and, you know, suburban, and back to that original dance music culture that like I grew up with in the early kind of proto period of what dance music was. And that's what I think is really beautiful for people to experience. That mixed dance floor is what really makes this the best, you know. It's that people watch when you get everybody there together at once, and it's like, what is going on?
Totally. Yeah, I think that, you know, because of the pandemic, and we've all had time to be by ourselves in isolation, and the opportunity to reflect and basically, you know, help each other out in our local communities. I think that as we move forward, there's going to be a larger focus on celebrating your local communities, your local artists, because, you know, countries are going to be rebounding at different rates. Flights are still going to be basically cautionary. You know, vaccines are rolling out at different rates. So I think that there will be a chance to go back to the way things were in terms of celebrating your local artists, your local creatives, and creating that sense of community, because we all went through this hard period together, and the only, you know, people who, you know, we can rely on to rebuild this is ourselves, because our governments aren't doing it, you know. So I think it'd be a really interesting time for dance music, for the arts, you know, like you said, a creative renaissance. So I'm really looking forward to that rebound. You know?
Yeah, I think there's gonna be a real big boom, especially in local scenes. I've been predicting it. You know, I'm like, guys, you know, people aren't gonna need big international acts to fill clubs. People are gonna be out, and there's gonna be a real kind of, not vacuum, but there's gonna be a real kind of renaissance, and people starting events, and people wanting to go out and creating things and creating new ideas. Because a lot of, like, let's say the old guard lost so much during that time that those places closed. So it created like a new vacuum for new ideas to kind of emerge. And I'm like excited to see what comes out of that, and like who comes out pushing forward and creating this kind of new landscape that we're all going to be able to live in. It's really exciting. I mean, I think it's gonna be fucking crazy in the next couple of years. So, you know, a couple of years off.
Very looking forward to that, you know, because it gives everyone the opportunity to kind of shape and mold the scene, the industry. So yeah, that's very exciting stuff.
You keep people like New York, the city that like never sleeps, and you keep people inside for 2 years. I think people just not ever.
It's crazy. Yeah. Exactly.
It's like 2 years of pent up New York energy inside a flat. Once you can go out, it's like people are just gonna like it's gonna be. And I hope like really cities change their laws as well and allow people to do that. I think it's so important instead of keeping these kind of draconian kind of nightlife laws and that allow people in some states to go out to 2 a.m. or other things like this. I think LA is going to open up a bit more and allow people just to kind of experience life for the first time in 2 years after being locked up. I think that might hopefully have a really great effect on nightlife culture as well.
Absolutely, I agree. What artists have you been listening to lately? Any notable, who's been keeping your ears busy? What who's been inspiring?
I've listened to a lot of old DJ Duke stuff. Like I've just been listening to a lot of old music. It's kind of funny actually. A lot of like DJ Sven and like old house stuff and like Timmy Regisford. Like I've been like listening to a lot of like kind of really vocal house records. Going around my house like.
That like bitchy and also spiritual. Those house tracks. Like that's perfect.
94.
Any new up and coming artists or producers or labels that we should know about that are on your radar?
Well, I'm working on some music with Jaden Thompson. There's this girl I've been kind of working with a little bit, LP G.L.I.T.S. She's like this kind of femme house new thing coming from Texas. And then what else is going on? I mean, really, I've just been kind of working on these projects and trying to bridge things and focusing on Dream Access TV, which is going to be about the dreams. This new platform that's kind of a cable access channel we're launching on Twitch, and you guys are involved, having different programs from different content providers that are like DJs doing other stuff than DJing and talk shows and cooking. And it's all going to be this kind of 80s New York, like public access kind of stylized kind of way. So just working on that and creating music, been so bad with kind of finding new artists and doing all that stuff. I just am kind of like trying to catch up with friends and make new art, and create things and spaces for people to kind of get into. I think I'm getting to that age where you start just kind of getting in your own ways and being not a hermit, but you're just like, oh, I just like how it used to. There's too much new stuff, and I'm like, oh, it's too fast. Why does it need to be 140 BPMs? Like, oh, just sounds like a shotgun. Like gun going off. I feel like an old person these days. So just really doing that and trying to kind of conceptualize more ideas than anything.
Yeah, we're really excited to be working on Dream Access TV with you. I think it's a great opportunity to not only showcase like the different creative ideas from other DJs, because I know that they're not necessarily doing music geared stuff, but like really kooky, out there, programming. And what we're gonna do is bring different collectives and have different DJs on board and interview them.
Artists,
Yeah, totally. Yeah, no, I think it's great, and I'm excited about that. And I believe it's launching. Do you want to talk about like when it's launching and all that stuff?
Yeah. So we're kind of doing a press release on April Fools, so people think it's a joke, and then launching on 420, so people really think it's a joke, but it's not. It's a real thing. It's gonna probably start. Kicks off on 420, but then it's gonna air every Sunday, like all Sunday from the morning to it's gonna be 15 hours, so a full day, and it's meant for people to kind of zone out to put on the middle of the day. You crack it on and so there's gonna be a kind of a myriad of different programs, from ambient stuff to talks to DJ sets to DJ mukbang with people eating. There's gonna be some tech stuff. It's just gonna be weird and wonderful, and it's like the perfect thing to put on the Sunday if you're a bit bored. And looking at most television programming today, I think we'll be able to, really compete with some bigger networks in terms of entertainment. So, I just want things to be kind of like weird in our own sense, and the kind of like, it all started with us kind of watching a John Waters movie. Was it Christmas? Was it Christmas we were at Tova's?
Oh yeah.
Yeah, at Christmas when we were watching these movies, and we're like, I was talking about doing some kitsch stuff, and we're like, I had this kind of approach from Twitch to do a channel, and then I was like, wow, you know, it'd be cool to do a channel instead of like me DJing fucking every day, which is very boring for anybody, to kind of create a more inclusive channel with other people doing shows. And then we're on Tova's couch I made this huge dinner for everyone.
Oh, and
so Tova's a friend of ours in New York, and and that turned into what this is today. So I'm like really excited, and to have started that journey over a glass of wine and with you and a like holiday feast with Nita and the whole crew, and I'm happy to be kicking it off very soon here. So yeah,
I'm so excited for it. And by the way, everyone, Seth is an incredible cook, like absolutely incredible.
I didn't get fat for no reason, that's for sure.
Well, thank you so much for taking the time to talk to us at Community Bread, and we're looking forward to working with you on the Dream Access TV.
And I look forward to being back in New York. I'm going to be actually back in New York in a couple of weeks, so I'll see you very soon.
Awesome.
Thank you so
Take
much.
Care.
Bye.